Chapter 38. Quotian Shan encounters tigers in the mountain. A monk from Sweet Dew Temple meets his foe. Tu Shaoqing offered Quotian Shan a feast in his riverside house, while he and Wu Shu called on Dr. Yu to explain who Quo was and asked for a letter of introduction for him to take to Xi'an. Dr. Yu heard them out attentively. "Of course I will write you a letter," he said, but more is needed than a mere introduction. Your friend can hardly have money enough for such a long journey, so I shall give you 10 taels for him, Shaoqing. Don't tell him, though, that it comes from me." He lost no time in writing a letter and fetching the silver for Tu, who took both introductions and money home with Wu. Tu pawned some clothes for 4 taels, and Wu raised another 2 taels at the pawn shop. They insisted on keeping Quo for another day, and when Quang Shao Kuang learned of his case, he wrote another letter of introduction and gave it with 4 taels to Tu. The morning after that, Tu prepared a farewell meal for Quo, at which Wu accompanied them. After the meal, they roped Quo's baggage for him and presented him with 20 taels and 2 introductory letters. He refused, however, to take the money. "This silver belongs to a few of us here. It's not stolen," cried Tu. "You mustn't refuse, sir." Then Quo accepted it and left the house, having eaten his fill. Tu and Wu saw him beyond the western gate. Traveling by day and resting by night, Quotian Shan came to the province of Shenxi. Since Mr. Yu of the magistrate of Tongkuan County, Quo had to go out of his way to call on him. This Mr. Yu, whose name was Fu Lai, was an old Nanking scholar who had come to this post the previous year and performed a good deed immediately after his arrival. A native of Quantung, who was sentenced to exile at the border of Shenxi and was traveling there with his wife, had died here. His widow wept and sobbed by the roadside, but when people spoke to her, she could not understand their dialect, nor they hers, and they had to take her to the county court. Magistrate Yu realized that the woman wanted to go back to Quantung and took pity on her. He gave her 50 taels and ordered the old runner to escort her home. Then, in his own hand, he drew up a moving appeal on white silk, signed it with his own name, and sealed it with Tongkuan County seal. "Take this lady and this roll of silk," he ordered the runners. "At each prefectural town or county seat you come to, show this scroll to the local officials. Ask them to set their seals to it. When you have delivered her safely home, bring me back a letter from the authorities there." The runner promised to do this, and when the woman had kowtowed her thanks, they left. A year or so later, the runner returned. "All the officials on the road who read your appeals were sorry for that woman, Your Honor," he reported. "Some gave her 10 taels, others 8, some 6. By the time she reached home, she had over 200. When I saw her back to her family in Quantung, over 100 of her relatives bowed their thanks to heaven for your goodness. They actually kowtowed to me too, and called me a living Buddha. So thanks to your Honor's goodness, even I come in for some praise." Magistrate Yu was delighted, and sent him away with several taels of silver. Now the gateman brought in a card announcing that Quotian Shan had called for a letter from Dr. Yu. When Magistrate Yu read the letter, he was greatly impressed. He invited Quo in at once, and as soon as they had bowed to each other and sat down, a meal was served. While they were talking, the gateman came in. "Your Honor is asked to go down to the country for the examination," he announced. "I must leave on public business and shan't be back till the day after tomorrow, sir," said Magistrate to Quo. "I hope you'll be good enough to stay here for 3 days till I come back, in order that I may profit by your instruction. Indeed, if you are going to Qingtu, I would like you to take a letter to an old friend of mine there. Pray don't refuse me." "Since you are so kind, how can I refuse?" replied Quo. "But I am a rough fellow. I can't stay in the yamen. Is there any temple in your honorable district where I can put up for a couple of days?" "There is a temple, but a very small one," said the magistrate. "However, we have an Ocean Moon monastery here, whose abbot is a good man. I will send you to him." He ordered a yamen runner, "Take Mr. Quo's baggage to Ocean Moon Monastery and tell the abbot I sent him." The runner assented, and Quo took his leave. Magistrate Yu saw him outside the gate. When Quo and the runner entered the lodge of Ocean Moon Monastery, an acolyte went in to announce them. The old abbot came out, greeted them, asked them to sit down, and offered them tea. The runner left. "Have you been here long, father?" asked Quo. "I used to live in Sweet Dew Temple in Wuhu County," replied the abbot. "Later I was the abbot of the Defender's Temple in Peking, but because I found the capital too noisy, I moved here." "So you are Mr. Quo. May I ask what business takes you to Qingtu?" The abbot had an ascetic yet kindly face. "I would not speak of this to others," said Kuo, "but I can confide in you." He proceeded to give a heart-rending account of his search for his father. The abbot shed tears inside, then lodged Kuo in his own quarters and prepared a vegetarian meal for him. When Kuo gave him 2 pears he brought on the road, the abbot accepted them with thanks. He bade a scullion carry 2 vats into the courtyard, put a pear in each, pour several buckets of water over them, and mash the pears with a pole. This done, he beat the clapper and assembled all the monks, over 200 in all, to drink 1 bowl apiece. Kuo, looking on, nodded approvingly. On the 3rd day, Magistrate Yiu came back and invited Kuo to a feast. After the meal, he gave 50 taels of silver and a letter. "I would have liked to entertain you for some time, sir, but I must not delay your search for your father," he said. "Take these 50 taels for your expenses on the road. When you reach Chengtu, give this letter to Mr. Hisao Hao Hisun. He is a gentleman of the old school who lives at East Mountain, 6 or 7 miles from Chengtu. And if you find yourself in any difficulty, he will help you." The magistrate was so obviously sincere that Kuo could not refuse. He thanked him, accepted the silver and letter, then went back to Ocean Moon Monastery to take his leave of the abbot. "When you reach Chengtu and find your worthy father," said the abbot, bringing his palms together, "be sure to send me a letter to end my anxiety." Kuo promised to do this, and the abbot saw him out. Shouldering his luggage, Kuo journeyed on for several days along a narrow mountainous track. At each step his heart was in his mouth. One day dusk fell while he was far from any village, but as he pressed forward he met a man. "Can you tell me, uncle, how far is it to the nearest inn?" asked Kuo. 5 or 6 miles was the answer. "You must make haste, traveller, for a tiger prowls this path at night. Keep a good lookout." When Kuo heard this, he hurried as fast as his legs would carry him. It was night now, but luckily a full moon climbed up from behind the mountains and sailed high above to illumine the way clearly. As he strode on in the midnight to the edge of a forest, the high wind sprang up, whirling and rustling the falling leaves. And as the wind passed, out leapt a tiger. "Help!" cried Kuo, falling to the ground. The tiger pounced upon Kuo and squatted over him. After watching him for some time, it decided that since he did not open his eyes, he must be dead, and rose to scoop out a pit. Into this pit it lugged Kuo, scattering falling leaves over him with its paws, then left. From his pit, Kuo watched fervently as the tiger lopped off to a mountain peak about a mile away, whence it looked back with blazing eyes to see whether he had moved or not. Satisfied that he had not, it lopped off. Then Kuo crawled out of the pit. "Although that brute has gone," he thought, "it's bound to come back to eat me. What shall I do?" At his wit's end, he noticed a big tree in front and swarmed up it. Then it occurred to him, "If the tiger comes back and gives a fearful roar, I shall be so terrified I shall tumble down." He unwound his puttees and fastened himself to the tree. At midnight, when the moon was preternaturally bright, the tiger came back followed by another creature. This second beast was completely white, had a single horn, eyes like huge red lanterns, and held itself erect as it bounded forward. Kuo had no idea what it was. Upon drawing near, this beast sat down while the tiger hurried to the pit to find the body. But when it discovered that its prey had disappeared, the tiger cringed with fear. The other beast flew into a rage and thrust out one paw to knock off the tiger's head, felling it to the ground. The strange beast raged up and down, its fur bristling, until raising its head it saw in the moonlight a man perched on the tree. Then it hurled itself furiously at Kuo. In its first bound it fell short of its quarry and slithered to the ground. But leaping again with all its might, it came within a foot of Kuo. "This is the end," thought the wretched man. As luck would have it, however, there was a dead branch a foot or more longer lower down the trunk, and in its furious leap the beast had impaled itself on this branch. The harder it struggled, the deeper the branch drove into its belly. After struggling desperately half the night, it finally expired on the tree. With dawn came several hunters carrying fowling pieces and prolonged sticks. At the sight of these 2 beasts they jumped for fright. When Kuo called out to them from the tree, they helped him down and asked his name. "I am a traveller," said Kuo. "Heaven took pity on me and saved my life, but I must hurry on my way now. You must take these 2 beasts to your local magistrate to ask for a reward." The hunters gave him some of their dried provisions and venison and made him eat his fill. Then they carried his load a couple of miles for him before going their own way. Carrying his baggage, Kuo journeyed on for several more days and put up one evening in a small temple in a mountain valley. After questioning him on his journey, the monk served a vegetarian meal and sat down by the window to share it with him. While they were eating, there was a blinding red flash outside like some conflagration. "Help!" cried Kuo, dropping his bowl. "Fire!" "Sit down, sir, and don't be upset," said the monk with a smile. "That is my snow brother." The meal at an end, he cleared the table and opened the window. "Look, stranger," he said. Raising his eyes, Kuo saw an extraordinary creature squatting on the hillside in front. It had a single horn and a single eye behind one ear. It was one of the beasts called P1s. No matter how thick a sheet of ice, a P1 can shatter it with one roar. "That is my snow brother," said the monk. That night a tremendous snowstorm started, which lasted for 24 hours till the snow lay more than 3 feet deep. Kuo had no choice but to spend another day there. The next day, when the snow stopped, Kuo took his leave of the old monk and struggled along the slippery mountain path. There were sheer drops on either side, and icicles as sharp as knives. He made slow headway, and as dusk fell, he saw by the glimmer of the snow a red object hanging from a tree in a wood ahead. Another traveler a few hundred yards in front of him toppled straight into the gully when he reached this red object. Kuo froze in his tracks. Why should a man fall over at the sight of that red thing, he wondered. Straining his eyes, he saw a human being emerge from under the red object, pick up the baggage the dead man had let fall, then vanish once more from sight. With an inkling of what was afoot, Kuo hurried forward to find a woman in red hanging from the tree. Her hair was loose, and from her mouth hung a tongue of crimson felt. In a vat buried at her feet squatted a man who jumped at Kuo's approach. When he saw how hefty Kuo looked, however, he dared not attack him. But clasped his hands and stepped forward. "Go on your way, stranger," he said. "This is no business of yours." "I know what you are up to," said Kuo. "Don't get excited. I can help you. Who is this woman pretending to have hanged herself?" "My wife." "Let her down. Where do you live? Suppose we go to your house and have a talk." The highwayman undid a rope knotted at the nape of his wife's neck and let her down. She rolled up her hair, removed the false tongue dangling from her mouth, took off the iron halter round which the rope had been fastened, and divested herself of the red garment. Her husband pointed to a 2-roomed thatched cottage by the roadside. "There's my home," he said. Husband and wife followed Kuo to their house, invited him to be seated, and brewed a pot of tea. Why do such wicked deeds for the sake of loot?" said Kuo. "Frightening people to death is against the will of heaven. Though I am poor myself, I can't help pitying you when I see how low you have sunk. I have 10 taels of silver here, which I'll give you and your wife as capital for a small business, so that you can turn over a new leaf. What is your name?" The highwayman kowtowed. "Thank you, stranger, for your help," he said. "My name is Moon Nai. My wife and I come of good families, but cold and hunger recently forced us to do this. Now, thanks to this money you have given us, we can turn over a new leaf. May I ask your name, sir?" "My name is Kuo, and I am a native of Hukuang on my way to Qingtu." Mu's wife came to thank Kuo too and prepared him a meal. "Since you dare hold people up, you must know some of the military arts," said Kuo after eating. "But unless you're an expert in them, you will never achieve much. Let me teach you what I know of fencing and boxing." Mu was overjoyed and kept him there for 2 days, during which time Kuo painstakingly taught him fencing and boxing, and Mu acknowledged Kuo as his teacher. On the 3rd day, when Kuo insisted on leaving, they put dried rations and roast meat in his baggage and carried it 10 miles for him before bidding him farewell. Taking over his baggage, Kuo Te Shan traveled on for several days. It was bitterly cold, and he was trudging in the teeth of a northwest wind along a mountain path as hard and slippery as wax. He plodded on till evening, when he heard a roar from a cave and another tiger leapt out. "This is surely the end," thought Kuo, and fell unconscious to the ground. Now tigers will only devour those who are afraid of them. Therefore, seeing Kuo lie stark and stiff, the tiger dared not eat him, but simply sniffed at his face. One of its whiskers tickled Kuo's nose, whereupon he gave a great sneeze, and the tiger jumped for fright and fled. In a few bounds it reached the mountain top and fell into a chasm, where it caught on the spare sharp icicles and froze to death. By the time Kuo scrambled to his feet, the tiger had disappeared. What a narrow escape! He sighed for relief, shouldered his baggage, and went on. At last he reached Qingtu and learned that his father was a monk in a temple a dozen miles away. He made his way straight to the temple and knocked at the gate. The old monk who let him in started at the sight of him. Recognizing his father, Kuo knelt down and sobbed. "Please get up, sir," said the monk. "I have no son. You must have taken me for someone else." I have traveled for thousands of miles to find you, father. Why won't you recognize me? I told you just now I have no son. You must look elsewhere for your father. Why come crying to me? Though I haven't seen you for so many years, father, do you think I don't know you? The filial son knelt down and would not rise. I entered orders as a boy, protested the monk. What son could I have? At that, Kuo wept bitterly. You may not recognize your son, father, but your son insists on recognizing you. His persistence made the old monk lose patience. You scoundrel, he shouted. You've just come to make trouble. Get out now. I'm going to close the temple gate. Still Kuo knelt there sobbing and would not leave. If you don't go, threatened the monk, I'll fetch a knife and kill you. Kill me if you like, father, cried Kuo, prostrate on the ground. I cannot leave you. In a rage, the old monk pulled Kuo to his feet, seized him by the scruff of his neck, and pushed him out, locking the gate behind him. He then went back into the temple and turned a deaf ear to his son's cries. Outside the temple, Kuo wept and sobbed, but dared not knock at the gate. It is no use, he thought as dusk fell. It doesn't look as if my father will own me. Raising his eyes, he saw that the temple was called Bamboo Hill Temple. He rented a room a few hundred yards away. And the next morning, when a priest came out of the temple, he bribed him to take in some fuel and rice every day for his father. In less than a year, all the money was spent, and he thought of going to East Mountain to find Hisao house Hisun, but did not like to leave his father unprovided. So he hired himself to a nearby family, and by cutting wood and carrying earth for them was able to make a few cents every day with which to support his old man. When he learned that one of his neighbors was going to Shingxi, he wrote a detailed account of his search for his father and asked the neighbor to deliver this to the abbot of Ocean Moon Monastery. The letter sent the abbot into raptures and increased his admiration for Kuo. A few days later, a mendicant monk came to the monastery. This was none other than Chao Tai, the brigade chief, who looked as fierce as ever with his disheveled hair and wild eyes. The kindly abbot let him stay, but the wicked man drank and brawled and beat the other monks. There was no crime he would not stoop to. The chief monk led a delegation to complain to the abbot. If this fellow is allowed to stay, he will lower the tone of the monastery, they declared. They begged the abbot to drive him out, but when the abbot bade him go, he refused. Later, the chief monk ordered an acolyte to tell Chao, the abbot says you must leave. If you don't obey him, he will enforce our monastery rule and have you carried out to the back courtyard and burned. When the wicked monk heard this, he was furious. The next day, without taking his leave of the abbot, he put his clothes together and left. Half a year later, the abbot decided to visit Ome Mountain, calling on Kuo Ten Shan in Chengtu on the way. He bade farewell to the monks, shouldered his baggage and alms bowl, and set out for Sichuan. 30 or 40 miles from Chengtu, the abbot left his inn early one morning to go out and enjoy the scenery, and walked into a tea house for some tea. There was another monk there who remembered the abbot, though the abbot did not recognize him. He stepped forward and bowed. There is no good tea here, brother, he said, but I live in a small temple not far away. Won't you go there with me to drink? With pleasure, replied the abbot. The monk led the abbot over 2 miles by a winding path to a temple. In the front courtyard was a statue of a bodhisattva. There was no images in the building in the back courtyard, but in the middle room was a wicker couch. Abbot, cried the monk once they were in the temple, don't you know me? The abbot suddenly realized that this was the wicked monk he had driven out. He gave a start. For the moment I had forgotten, he said. Now I know you. The wicked monk strode over to the couch and sat down, glaring. Now you've fallen into my hands. Don't think you can escape, he cried. There's a wine shop kept by an old woman a few hundred yards up the slope. Take this gourd and have it filled with wine for me. Look sharp. Not daring to refuse, the abbot took the gourd, found the old woman on the slope, and handed the gourd to her. She took it, looking the abbot over from head to foot as she did so, and tears welled from her eyes as she poured out the wine. The abbot was most disconcerted. What is there about me that distresses you so, Granny? He asked. You seem a good man, father. It's too bad you should come to such a cruel end. What cruel end? Did you come from that temple a few hundred yards away, father? Yes. How did you guess? I know this gourd. Whenever he means to eat someone's brains, he sends to my shop for wine. Once you take this wine back, father, you're as good as dead. When the abbot heard this, he nearly took leave of his senses. What can I do? He demanded desperately. I must get away from here. How can you? She asked. His bandits are everywhere for 12 miles around. If anyone escapes from his temple, he has only to sound his clapper, and at once you'll be trussed up and carried back." The abbot fell, weeping, to the ground. "Save me, Granny," he begged. "How can I save you?" she retorted. "If they knew I'd told you, they'd kill me too. But you look such a kind man, Father. I wouldn't like you to die such a cruel death. So I'll tell you how to get someone who may help you." "Who is that, Granny?" In her own good time, the old woman told him. But to know whom she named, you must read the next chapter.